Meantime, as you know, the issue that the Western world must and continues to face is the growing power of China. We are relentless in talking about it because they are relentless in pursuing the dominance of the West. Now, they have two ways to do this. They buy off parts of the world. That seems to go pretty well in New Zealand, which is, of course, part of the Five Eyes and supposedly on our side of the Western values conversation. But the other way they try to do it is that they try to use economic coercion, their power, to come after countries like Australia that are willing to stand up for freedom. And the most recent Secretary of State in the United States is a guy called Mike Pompeo. Sherry mentioned him a little bit earlier as a potential presidential candidate. Look, who knows? It's a long way between now and then, and whether Trump runs or not, that's not the point that I'm talking about here. But Mike Pompeo gave an amazing interview to Greg Sheridan, the foreign editor of the Australian newspaper this weekend, and I thought I should bring it to you, which is that COVID is just China's first virus threat. Now think about this. You can be a person who will say, well, geez, it's a whole series of horrible accidents that just happened to ruin the entire Western world and help remove a leader who was willing to fight against them. The former Secretary of State says this: the central moment that the Chinese knew they had a virulent virus that was human-to-human transmissible, their choice was to lock down Wuhan and to lock down the world from understanding the risk that was presented to it. The cover-up alone, regardless of where the virus actually began, is something the CCP, Chinese Communist Party, must be held account for. Mike Pompeo continues, the Chinese Communist Party deeply believes their Marxist-Leninist ideology is the right ideology for the world, and they attempt to impose that ideology everywhere. Their intentions are to undermine democracy. Couldn't be clearer. Which is why we keep talking about that giant consulate, basically an embassy, that exists in South Australia. Now, this is a huge facility in a suburban area, and it is way bigger than any other consulate that exists anywhere in South Australia. And it is not because there is a giant Chinese expat community there. It is because so much of the Australian defence industry is based in South Australia. All those subs, all of those contracts which have been put in place, government after government after government. To give you an idea of just how big this thing is compared to consulates, not embassies, so satellite embassies in places other than our capital in Canberra. Here's the independent Senator Rex Patrick on our air last week explaining just how big this thing is.
Noting that we have across Australia about 150 consulate staff in various different Chinese buildings around the country. The United States, our closest ally, has about 110. It's disproportionate, and we don't understand the reasons why there are so many people.
Which is why it was ridiculous for Premier Marshmallow, Stephen Marshall of South Australia, to attend the official opening of this needlessly large facility in South Australia. Remember the words of Mike Pompeo and what the end game is for China. They'll do it nice with a bag full of dollars, or they'll do it mean. But either way, that's their destination. No wonder people were blowing up when this guy decided to give the tick of approval to this monstrosity.
Stephen is a traitor! Stephen is a traitor!
Yeah, forgive me for being on the side of those who are put in re-education camps. Their ultimate sin is believing in a God that isn't the Chinese Communist Party.